Hello, everybody. We are here and live at a special time. And today we are going to talk about our heart compass. And what that means is having the courage of setting boundaries in relationships. And what we want you to know about that is setting boundaries is not the act of being selfish, it's the act of self love. It's protecting one's emotions and your physical energy, to lower your stress and to just protect your heart, protect your whole body, your energy, and your spirit. So today we are going to just explore how you set boundaries in all types of relationships. I am your co host, Cara Maldonado.
And I'm your other co host, Kimberly Anderson. And we are so grateful for you guys joining us today. So, yay! Here we are.
We are here. Yes. And, we were expecting to have a special guest today who is a relationship coach who specializes on relationships and how you can set boundaries. And I think she got held up, and there may have been some uh, time difference because she is on the East Coast. So she might pop in, and then if that happens, we apologize ahead of time for that confusion. But, we're just going to power ahead and we're going to tackle just some of the myths behind the different, relationships that boundaries are necessary to adapt. So, Kimberly, let's kind of talk about that. When we say relationships and how boundaries apply in relationships, give me some idea of what you think about when we talk about that.
I love this topic because boundaries is one of the things that is a whole subject when we even do domestic violence courses. And boundaries are so important, not just in the relationship itself, but for yourself. And so understanding what boundaries you have and then holding yourself accountable to those. That way, when you're in relationship, you know where you stand and what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. And that doesn't mean you can't compromise,
Right.
but there are certain things for yourself that you hold dear to your heart that becomes a boundary. Examples would be maybe um, you know, want to be home if you go out on a date and you want to be home at 10 o'clock. Then if the person that you're with is like, no, 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 you're fine. Let's just stay out later. That is him not respecting your boundary or her. And that becomes a big issue because if that other person isn't willing to respect your boundary, that's just the first one that they're not respecting. How many more down the road or as you're building the relationship are they going to step all over? And we can call that a pink flag and not necessarily a red flag, if you will. But those things can lead to deeper issues into the relationship as you move forward. So it can be as simple as a time that I want to be home by,
Mm-hmm.
and you make
Right.
it happen. So
Absolutely. And boundaries, aren't just limited to intimate relationships.
Mhm.
There can be a friendship, you know, your bestie not respecting your boundaries, crossing the lines with maybe how you raise your children, having an opinion, or getting in the way of, an example. I had a friend who shared with me that she had a friendship where a friend thought it was okay to share alcohol with her son, who is of not even of age. I guess he's 18, and she felt because he was 18 that she could have alcohol with her friend's son. And for one, that's not your child. He's not 21. It's still not legal. It's not your place. And this whole argument ensues, and the friends thought she was right and was like, he's grown. What you know, and but it's like you're crossing the line. And so, I she said, well, what do I do? And I said, well, you have to set clear boundaries. If this is something that you don't feel comfortable with, you have to let them know this is your child. And if you have certain guidelines and that child still lives under your roof, and these are certain rules and guidelines that you have in your home, you know this is your friend. Maybe she's not the right kind of friend that you want to have, and that might be a bit of, on the probably over the top side, but people will take a mile if you give them an inch to cross the line.
Mhm.
But boundaries can be even at the workplace. You get paid to do a certain job, and your boss will, start giving you more and more tasks. And after a while, you're doing his job too, and you're not getting paid for it. And you're working 12 hours instead of 8 hours, and you're not getting paid for that, and you're not getting recognized for it. And if you don't speak up, and then 2 years go by and you're doing it, then what ends up happening? It becomes something that you're doing, and they just go, well, you've been doing it and you never said anything. What? So what are you doing talking about it now? And so these are all the different examples of what we're trying to make people understand, is that and these things weigh heavy on a person, is when you're not clear with your boundaries. Emotional and physical trauma starts to happen to
Mhm.
individuals, because you're feeling like your self-worth, is being compromised, and you're not, your value is being compromised, and just everything that you stand for is not being taken seriously. And then you don't feel like you just really feel like you don't have anywhere to go, anywhere to turn to. And so, Kimberly, let's talk about like some of the things that are taken from a person when they start losing their control, because basically that's what ends up happening when someone
Yeah.
pushes your boundaries.
Well, and I think too, you kind of even picked up on one is it goes back to your value, your self worth. When you start allowing other people to not respect your boundaries, whatever they may be, you start losing value and self worth for yourself. And that's where you start going down that whole path. And that one that you talked about with being at a job and you should be getting raises, or and they're piling all the work on you and whatnot. It really goes back to know your value.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of my son. I'll just throw this little story out there. He knows his value, and he's constantly testing that. Having those conversation with his boss, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I know this is my worth and my value and what I bring to the table. And so he constantly does that. Um, there's some of us that wouldn't have the gumption to do that. Um, but he does. And so I'm always impressed by that. And I feel like when you know your true value in all of those situations, I mean, we are our own advocate, number one. So be that for yourself.
Right.
Because again, going down that rabbit hole, if you just keep getting toppled with nobody's respecting your boundaries and then you don't know your value, you lose your self-worth, that goes into depression, and that's where other things start taking you, addictions, things
Absolutely.
like that. And going back to the boundaries, there are just a gazillion different probably examples that we could talk about, and the extreme ones like you were mentioning with the friend giving the son alcohol. There's even situations where I've seen spouses flirting with the friends of their spouse, and that's a big no-no. So again, all of those little tiny things become really big things if you don't address them and know your boundaries first. And you can't have a boundary with somebody else if you don't know your own. So, yeah, you know what? I'm thinking.
And I like this way of thinking. Boundaries are your compass.
Mm,
You know, I
mhm,
feel like it keeps your heart and centered.
yeah.
Your emotional and your physical from running off course.
Mhm.
I feel, am I hearing an echo?
I was just wondering if I don't hear an echo, but I'm wondering if our guest is trying to join. I'm not sure. I thought I saw something pop up, but then it blipped out. So again, we apologize for any technical issues or whatever might be going on. Uh, you know.
That's okay. It always happens when you go live. Things just glitch and whatever, just pay attention to the message, everybody.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the message. You know how that is. But yeah, I think that when you have defined boundaries, it also gives you clarity.
Mhm.
It gives clarity to everyone else, because what it does is it teaches people how you want to be treated,
Exactly.
you know and it gives them really clear expectations on, and it's not a punishment. It's funny because I have lots of rules, and people, my family and my friends, like, laugh at me all the time about my rules in my house, in my car. Blanca, you can't eat in there, food has to go in the trunk, all the things, right? There's a lot of boundaries. And it's not to be mean. It's not, and it's not a punishment for anyone. It's not to be funny. It's so that if you don't have them, then what ends up happening is you build up resentment because you don't like something that someone's doing, and then you explode, or you have a certain feeling towards someone because you're holding in some resentment because you don't know how to say, I really don't like every time I pick you up, you're eating and dropping food all in my car, and you never take out your garbage. Well, if you just would have said in the beginning, I really prefer if you don't eat in my car, what's wrong with doing that? That's not a bad thing. Then 6 months later, you go crazy about it, and a person was like, I never knew that. Had you have told me that, in the beginning, it would have been a
Mhm.
thing. So clear communication and clarity of what your expectations are is when you start setting these boundaries, and that's in your professional life as well as your personal life. I
Mhm.
think right out the gate, and it doesn't have to be an ugly way, it doesn't have to be a bad way, and it goes both ways. You
Yeah.
know, it's not just one sided, it goes both ways. Do you like this? No, you don't. Okay, cool. I don't like it either. Whatever. You shake hands on it, you keep it moving, right? You know,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's what communication is. It's what it's called adulting, right? You know? And I think we have to learn to do that. It's when you don't do that, is when all these things started happening, when people are taking advantage of you. And I think it goes back to what we kind of briefly touched on in the beginning, and maybe the basis is the self-worth component.
Mm.
You know, going back to that is, do I have enough confidence to feel that I'm worthy enough to say, I don't like this? This doesn't make me feel good. This is not what I want to do. This is not where I want to be. This is not how you should talk to me. This is not how I want to be. This is not where I want to go. You know, all these things, you know, and it goes all the way back to that
Mhm.
feeling of, do I feel worthy?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I completely agree. I think one of the things that you mentioned is it shows people how to treat you. And so when you're showing up knowing your self-worth and you have your boundaries, that is what tells people how you expect to be treated. And it shows how you plan to treat others as well. Like, you respect my boundaries, I respect you. And it helps the relationship grow. Doesn't matter the type of relationship you're in. And so, using that as your compass, which I love, that's how we're using it today. I
Right.
just think that's such a great guide. And does it feel right? Tap into that intuition. We talked about that a lot recently. But does that feel right? Does that make sense for me? Is that how I want to be treated? And if it's not, change that. Have that conversation with yourself and
Yeah.
then others.
Right.
We tend to think about it's about everybody else when it starts with us.
Exactly. You know,
So,
boundaries are, let's just say, they're your instructions,
mm,
right?
ooh, that was good.
Okay. They're the instructions on how you want to show up and how you want others to treat you. Okay, so
Yeah.
saying that, it's the clear definition, and it defines how you want to be treated. Period, in the end. And
Mhm.
based on that, you don't want the emotional overload. You don't want the anxiety loops. You don't want your sleep disrupted because you're worried about showing up for work the next day and how your boss is going to treat you because he's always crossing the boundaries, right? You don't want that. So you don't want your nervous system completely shutting down every time you come home because your significant other is an idiot,
Yeah. Right?
right?
Yeah.
You know, your kids are always just doing the most. You know, you have to be able to say, I'm not raising my voice. I'm not going to, I don't have to get out of character. And I call it acting mentally irregular. You know, you don't have to do any of those things if you're just clear with your boundaries. You marry them, you stay true to them, you let people know what they are, and you don't change them until which time you decide, okay, you know, I'm good with that. I'm going to add to this, or I'm going to take away that, or whatever. But you know what? You are the one in control of it.
Yeah.
You, not anyone else. You
Yeah.
manage it. You're responsible, because you know what? When you're left with those emotions going like a roller coaster, no one else cares. They're not there to clean it up, to mend it, to make you feel better.
No.
You deal with it. You have to deal with it. So it's, you know, we have to stop the people pleasing, and overdoing everything and just showing up for those who don't show up for you, broken promises and all the things that are going on. And it doesn't mean, like you mentioned a minute ago, Kimberly, is that we feel like, oh my goodness, we're being mean, or, you know, wow, we have to do this because we promised, or it's not nice if we don't do that. No, we have to do what is healthy for us in that moment.
I I love that. Yeah. And it's your truth. As you were talking, I kept thinking it's your truth. It's your truth.
Mhm.
And your truth is what guides you. Your truth becomes your compass. Your truth is your boundaries and your self-worth at the root of it all. And
Yeah.
so I think when we remember that, we're more willing to tap into our value, remember our value and our self-worth so that we are able to, guide ourselves in our relationships, in our professional lives, and we can then make better decisions for ourselves and ultimately our family. It looks like our guest is going to try and jump in,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. Um, I keep watching the screen and then I see blips and then I'm not sure and then I don't know. We'll see. So who knows? But just still throwing that out there that we might just
Yeah,
all
if
be
she,
have
if
another
she
person.
can, we want her to give at least a few minutes of expertise on healthy
Mhm.
love relationships. That would be great. Um, that would be wonderful, because there, everything, let's be clear. Everything isn't a negative. There are some very beautiful, healthy relationships out there. There's healthy work relationships, there's healthy friendships, there's healthy, intimate love relationships. And I think a lot of it does start with healthy boundaries, healthy, intentional boundaries, and self respect within, and mutual self respect. And, because what it does is it ends up protecting your time, your energy, your heart, emotionally and physically, between each party. And so that's really important. And when you find that, cherish that, nurture that, protect that. And it happens, and it is there, and it's a beautiful thing when you do find it, and you treat it right, and you're very respectful to it, and that goes both ways. It's
Mhm.
called heart intelligence. There's emotional intelligence and there's heart intelligence. When you
For
are in
sure.
line, your love is in alignment.
Amen.
Right?
The other thing too is it goes back to communication.
Yes.
So when it's not just about, we're always on the side of the women, but the men's side as well, or whatever your partner is, it's about understanding how each of you communicate, how each of you feel loved, and which goes into your boundaries. And so when you're able to have those conversations up front and early, especially in an intimate relationship, that's going to help your relationship go further. A little different when it's just friends and besties, like you're still kind of like, do I even want to like you kind of thing, but which is also on the same relationship too, I guess.
Right.
But we have that, that that communication is a real key in a good relationship because you're able to figure out what each other's boundaries are, how you want to be treated, how um, your love language basically. How do
Mhm.
you feel loved? How can I make you feel loved? And this is me. And they could be completely two different things. So you work together. And that's where that compromise is going to come into because hold steadfast to your boundaries, but understand in a relationship that some things are a compromise. Like maybe you love to cook, but you don't always want to cook. And the other one never doesn't even like to cook, doesn't know how, doesn't like to. So what's that compromise? Okay, well, maybe sometimes they figure out how to cook, or those are the days you go out or
Right.
something. So it's not even just so on the intimate things, it's really about the relationship. And I always say there's three parts. There's the respect for you, the respect for yourself, and the respect for the relationship. And it's three different pieces being in harmony together, because we can argue or fight or, just be going along, but is the respect for the relationship still there? Because if
Right.
you're fighting here, does that break the relationship? Are you able to move through it for the relationship? And so I think that's a real important piece as well, just to remember there's those three pieces that are creating the you, when a lot of times we just think it's the two, it's you and me,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's you, me,
Right.
and the relationship. And
Right.
so respecting that relationship can actually help you talk through, walk through, and get through those tougher times,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. And then it gets more complicated when children get involved. Then it's
Oh,
four pieces. Right? It gets
there's a whole
crazy. It's a whole
like a
thing,
family, like that thing
right?
keeps growing.
Yeah, dynamics really change then. But but yeah, choosing peace over performance. I like that analogy about the who liking cooking and everything. It's like
Mhm.
self-respect over self-sacrifice. It's all those things. It's like when you honor your boundaries, your heart no longer has to work overtime to
Mhm.
survive the relationship. It
Yeah.
really doesn't, because then there's no more compromise at that time, because you each now have set your boundaries that are both being respected.
Mm.
At that, and if you truly are playing the game fair, you
Yeah.
know, then you don't have to do that. And that's when it really just all becomes living with intention, and it's
Yeah.
all in perfect alignment. And if there is such a thing, we like to believe in romance and believe that there are those just removing toxic relationships, and there are just great ones out there. That, I mean, everybody has their little bump here and there, but when you can communicate and work through and genuinely work through, because nothing is perfect, but when
Mhm.
you actually do the work,
Yeah.
then at least it's excellence, right?
Yeah. Might take a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But you're doing it.
you're doing it and you're working through it. And really when you have the understanding of boundaries and the respect for the relationship, that truly, truly does help you move through those tougher times, because you are doing things and maneuvering in ways that are for the relationship, not just individually.
Yes.
And that makes a big difference in that. And it looks like we're still going to have technical difficulties. So you and I are just going to finish this out and we'll figure out the next
And
time.
that's okay. And that's okay. And remember, viewers, as we're talking about this, and it is in the season of love, in the month of love, and all of that. But today's talk about boundaries is not only specific to your significant other or your love partner or whatever. It is all relationships. It's boundaries in any relationship. May it be the mechanic who works on your car. I mean, seriously, the person that grooms your dog, whatever it is. If you're finding it hard to deal with someone that is consistently in your life, a client, a customer, whatever it is, your sister, your mom, your dad, whoever, and it's like you just can't seem to maintain the boundaries that are comfortable for you, um,
Mhm.
then I want you to just step back and maybe just sit down and just write it down. Split the paper. What is it that is making you feel uncomfortable? What do you need to feel comfortable? And decide that you need to have that conversation, and it's going to be a tough conversation, but it's a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
You know, you need to do it no matter who it is, and if it makes sense that you feel more comfortable typing it up on and just sending it out on an email or writing a letter, whatever form that makes you feel comfortable doing it, because you're not quite there yet doing a face to face, but you have to take that first step, because the other option will be, it's going to affect you emotionally, spiritually, and physically if you keep carrying the weight of knowing that someone keeps crossing everything about you that makes you you. And that's your boundaries. That's your heart chakra is just falling apart here, because you know everything that you want in your peace, in your life, in your happiness is just being trampled over by someone else's needs and desires, and they're not taking you seriously, not hearing you, not caring or considering you at all, are to some degree, it doesn't matter if it's small, big, and we tend to go, oh, that's just how they are, that's just what they say, that's just how they talk, that's just, you no, no, we got to stop doing that. We have to stop dismissing people for bad behavior and then rewarding them for bad behavior. We have to stop doing that. It's not right, it's not fair. It's time to put on big girl, big guy panties or whatever and do what we have to do and tell people, I don't like this. I'm not going to take it anymore. I don't want you to do this to me anymore, to talk to me like this anymore. You know, I mean, even if you tell people they can't call you, can't text you, can't come to your house until they change the way that they treat you. You know, sometimes you got to divorce people out of your life.
Yep. And it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yeah. You know, and that was what the message was today. We were going to throw in some other love stuff, but we weren't going to do it because we were going to let the expert do it, and we could circle back around on another day when we're not having the technical difficulties from the East Coast, weather and things that are happening over there, and bring in our our expert, and we can revisit that so that you guys can, because love and relationships are 24/7, not
All
just
year round, not just February.
all year round, not just in February, but
Yep.
you know, so we will definitely be revisiting that. But again, we want to thank you all for joining us today and always, and supporting us on our platform. And yes, happy Galentine's and Valentine's and all those love things. Happy Love Day is what I call it.
Yeah. Love that.
Right?
We love that.
Yes.
Thanks for being here and watching it, hanging out with us. We love this,
Yes.
you know. And remember to be unleashed, because
Completely unleashed. You see how unleashed we are all the time. All the time.
Because in purpose you find power.
Absolutely. And be well. See you soon.
See you. Bye.